Now, it's no secret by now that Nothing Manacles are insanely busted. Practically every content creator has shown that Nothing Manacles is insanely busted right now. But if you don't happen to follow any content creators or you just have to be living under a rock, roll the clip. Yeah, Nothing Manacles are pretty disgusting now after the buff they got. But I was thinking, how can we fine tune this and perfect it in a way that'll be both beneficial for both ad clearing and DPS situations and raids? Because especially with the new dungeon coming out, there's going to be a most likely mix up of DPS and ad clearing similar to Thunder Doctrine and stuff like that. And after what Bungie has stated that it's going to be harder than Thunder Doctrine, we need to fine tune this build to be the most effective given what type of content we're going into and what ads we might face. So I did some research. I tried to do some fine tuning of this build, and I think I found the perfect way so that way you can use it for both ad clearing and DPS raid situations and stuff like that. So without further ado, let's go over the build beetle that I have for Nothing Manacles and how I would fine tune it along with some DPS rotations to use it in conjunction with the grenades and super as well. Now for this build again, the main exotic we're using is Nothing Manacles. Bungie gave it a lot of buffs in Renegades. Now with the charge grenade, it creates additional 4 more seekers on top of the grenade. It gets increased charge seeker damage versus combatants by 25%, improved charge seeking tracker versus combatants, increased charge seeker lifetime, and faster final projectile speed with that, as well as the exotic now spawning additional seekers on scatter grenade kill that can also chain off of itself. Now, a lot of the patch notes here state it's only for the charge grenade version of this with Chaos Accelerant. However, in actuality, the grenade itself at base got buffed as well. I did some testing with the grenade in conjunction with the charge grenade to see if there was any damage differentials, but there was no actual damage fluctuation between the normal version and the charge version, and I will go over the damage numbers here. So just keep that in mind. Now, because of Nothing Manacles buff, it kind of works similar to Graviton Lance, allowing it to kill chain off of itself into multiple ads and getting a lot of kills very frequently. And of course, we're going to go ahead and chain that and use that in conjunction with access to assets to help fuel our super getting that back faster, which is going to play into what we're going to be building into this so that we can use it for DPS on top of that. So with that being said, that's kind of like the mainstay focus of what we're using this build for, ad clearing and boss DPS. Now, of course, with that, the main thing we want to focus on is grenade stat and also super. Grenade stat to buff up the scatter grenade damage, and then super so that we can get supers back faster. And if we can increase it even more so to increase our super damage, we want to build off of that as well. Now, with all that being said, for comparison, I want to go over the damage numbers of both Nova Bombs and the scatter grenades. Now, for transparency, my grenade stat currently with this build is 155 and my super is at 145. So just keep that in mind that my numbers here are going to be different from yours depending on what stats you have, but this is the numbers I got with my current build. Now, for my slow up bomb, the max damage I hit was 4,986. Pretty comparable damage. Now, with the Vortex Nova, which also got buffed, however, it wasn't necessary towards its damage output, more so it just the pulling of the Vortex Nova itself, the total damage I got was 4,998. Slightly better than Slow Bomb, but not by much. Now, comparing those two to 3 scatter grenades with Echo of Undermining, again, I have 155 grenade stat and Super was 145. I hit for a total of 5,325 damage. If you're curious why there's 3 grenades, Nothing Manacles gives you 1 additional charge of Scatter Grenade, and with Chaos Accelerant, it also gives you another grenade charge, so they both stack together to give you a total of 3. Now with all 3 of those again, I hit for 5,325. Now after that, I did try it with Chaos Accelerant charging it up to see if the damage would increase. For the first number, I hit for 5,100 odd damage, so it was slightly less than it was supposed to be. Then I did another run through of it, and I got 5,300, and I believe it was 85 somewhere around there. So in essence, the charge factor of Chaos Accelerant with the Scatter Grenades and Nothing Manacles does not increase damage at all. Now I did some testing to see if it did push out the range bound of the tracking for the grenade, and from what I noticed, it does increase the range of how far those Seekers track and how aggressive they are by an additional 3 or so meters of the grenade itself. Now after a certain point, again, it still does fall off and does not track anymore, but it does increase the range of them with a charge up. That seems to be the only thing it really does. It does not increase damage at all. So keep that in mind when going with this build here and using Nothing Manacles. The charge up part of Chaos Accelerant does not really do anything except increase the range band of how strong it will track to enemies. So with that being said, we don't really need to take advantage of Chaos Accelerant to be fully efficient with this build. Now, we still want to have that for the additional grenade charge, but we don't need to focus on charging up. We can just focus on tossing it and don't really have to worry about that, second avenue charging up the grenade itself. So already with that, we can see these grenades are very good for total damage. Again, it's 3 of them, but again, it's a lot of damage output very fast. Now, of course, we can get these grenades back relatively frequently by using Feed the Void, allowing us to get Devour and get improved grenade recharge for enemy defeat. Practically throwing one scattered grenade can get us back our full grenade charge back right away. If you happen to toss out two of them, you can get all two of them back very rapidly and frequently, so it's not hard to utilize that in that aspect. So keeping that in mind, this is what I have for my build here as far as fragments and aspects. Again, for aspects, I have Feed the Void and Chaos Accelerant. For my fragments, I'm using Echo Persistent, so that way my Devour lasts a little bit longer in case I'm going through, in between transition points. I'm using Echo of Undermining because it did get a buff to now only give a -10 to your grenade stat as opposed to a -20. Plus, of course, that weakening effect does increase the damage output of these grenades. Then I'm using Echo of Explosion to give myself a +10 to super stat and allow my Void ability Final Blows to explode, which will also feed into Feed the Void. If any of those explosions get a kill, I get Devour off of that. And then, of course, Echo of Instability. That way, pairing this build with Void weapons will give them volatile rounds and increase their damage output on top of that as well, and just help out for overall ad clearing. So that's what I have for the build here. With that being said, for synergistic weapons to pair up with this build as far as ad clearing goes, the best weapon I'd see for this would be Corrective Measure from Vault of Glass, the updated version 600 RPM version with the origin trait. If they have the old one, you can still kind of use that one, but the newest one with that origin trait will play very well into this build, and overall just the grenade synergy of this. The biggest perk you want to look for is Demolitionist and Killing Tally. Demolition specifically, so that way the final blows give you more grenade energy, pairing up as well on top of Devour final blows to get your grenades back even faster than they normally would. Now, again, the reason why I say the newer version of this is because of the origin trait Time Loss Magazine. Final blows with this weapon grant bonus super energy. When your super expires, this weapon's magazine size is double for a long duration and reloads from reserves. Now remember, because Noble Bombs are a one-off super, we immediately get the bonuses of Time Loss Magazine for 20 seconds to have a doubled mag size, which plays very well into Killing Tally, so that way we have the bigger mag size to take advantage of the damage buff for just slaying out enemies. And of course, if we happen to pop the super again or throw a grenade, we can keep that high damage stack up longer and just auto reload that and still keep that going. So that's why this perk synergy right here would be the best weapon to pair with that. Now, if you're looking for something of the exotic variety to rock with this, Choir of One is probably the best pairing for this. Again, Void Synergy, we're getting Echo of Instability for volatile rounds. It plays very well into that and makes it anti-barrier on top of that. And of course, Choir of One has always been a really good weapon to use for Void, or just in general for any like harder end content you have to be taking it into. Now, because of Choir of One's ammo capacity and the ammo economy with this thing, you can run a double special loadout with this if you want to for more DPS situations, so you can rock maybe mid retrograde. But for me, since I'm taking this version of the build for more ad clearing situations, I wouldn't really use a double special loadout. I think a primary with Choir of One and of course Corrective Measure will probably be the best pairing for that, so that's what I would go for personally for ad clearing. Now, for the mods that I would rock with this, I'm rocking Harmonic Siphon, so that would make Orbs of Power to play into Devour, Ashes of Assets, because again, our grenades are giving us super energy. Because again, we're getting a lot of grenades kills with Ashes to Assets. We want to build up the super energy even more so to get more Novas. And of course, I'm just using Heavy Ammo Finder. For the gauntlets, it's kind of an interesting take. Currently, right now, I'm rocking 2 firepower. I was using 1 grenade font mod because I don't have max grenade stat. Unfortunately, my armor is not the best right now. I do need to fine tune it a little bit more. But currently, what ideally you want to go for is 3 firepower, so that way you can make orbs of power every second with your grenades. Reason being is because these grenades keep chaining and keep getting multiple enemies, you can essentially make 3 or 4 orbs in 1 grenade toss. So ideally you want to have the 3 firepower there. At the worst case scenario, 1 would be just fine, so you get the orbs of power, maybe a grenade font mod or anything else like that. That's ideally what you want to go for. Chest piece, your basic resistance mods. For the leg piece, again, for ad clearing specifically, I'm going for Harmonic Scavenger, Absolution, so my ability cooldowns get reduced from picking up Orbs of Power. And I'm using 1 Void Weapon Surge to pair up with my Machine Gun and Choir of One as well to get the increased damage on top of that. And then for the bottom, I'm rocking Time Dilation to have the duration last a little bit longer, playing into the Surge mod. And then Powerful Attraction, so I can pick up orbs nearby. And then Reaper, so that way I can get another orb after popping my class ability. So that's kind of like the ad clearing role for this here. So this build here already for ad clearing would carry you for most of the endgame content. Now, when it comes to DPS and more harder end content like dungeons and raids, the build is going to change slightly, specifically for the weapon aspect of what you're going to be using for this. Now, for the DPS part of this is where the weapon load is going to change slightly. From what I tested here and what I think is the most beneficial and very ease of use DPS rotation to use with this build, mods and abilities are staying the same. For the main exotic you'll be using for DPS would be Witherhoard. Witherhoard got buffed now to give it its old school auto loading holster duration time, so that way it auto reloads every 2 seconds. So that way it plays very well into bait and switch rotations now, like it used to be back in the day. So that's ideally we're going to be using Witherhoard for this. If you're going for pure DPS and rocking a double special loadout, ideally the new Arc Rocket Pulse Rifle is going to be the best one, specifically with with jolting feedback to apply that jolt effect and give additional damage on top of the damage we're already doing, which will also play into Witherhoard ticks, helping trigger those jolt damage ticks as well. So it's ideally the double pairing you want to pair with that. And of course, for the main heavy, we're going to be using Heathen Vengeance specifically with Demolitionist, Bait and Switch, and of course the origin trait for Time Loss Magazine. Because again, after popping the Noble Bomb, we have 2 rockets instead of 1. And of course, ideally Demolitionist, because Nothing Manacles has 3 grenade charges, we can do 3 auto loads for this rocket after popping our grenade. Now with this loadout here, I tried 2 different rotations with the 2 different Noble Bombs. I tried with Slova and Vortex. With the Vortex DPS rotation, I came up to a total damage output of 24,203. Now on that rotation that you're seeing in the background, I did end up missing 1 Witherhoard shot before emptying out my rocket pulse rifle. So the damage would have been actually higher than it is here by probably an additional maybe 200 or 300, 400 damage, but give or take a little bit on that. But that's ideally the damage output that I hit for this rotation here. Now with the Slowa Bomb, doing a perfect rotation, I hit for 24,357. Obviously, we can see here Vortex Nova is a little bit better for DPS. However, you do run the risk of, possibly missing and ruining your rotation outright. So just keep in mind for that. But for the basic rotation of this, you would toss your scatter grenade, fire your Noble Bomb, fire Witherhoard, shoot 1 shot of the rocket pulse rifle, fire 2 rounds of the Heathen Vengeance, throw a grenade, fire an additional 2 more shots, delay it by an additional second, throw another grenade, swap to Witherhoard, the rocket pulse rifle, fire the last 2 rockets again, go back to Witherhoard, fire 1 more shot, and then dump your rocket pulse rifle until you're completely empty of the mag. So that's ideally the DPS rotation you would use with this build. Now armor mods are going to be staying the same. However, for the boots, you just simply swap to the triple void search. You can get that damage bump on top of that, and you'll be good to go for that. Now speaking of that again, I said that grenade stat and super stat are going to be the biggest ones you want to go for. Ideally, what I'm looking for this build is rocking 170 grenade and possibly 150 super if I can get it, depending on, the augmentations of the tier 5 armor pieces I can get. Sadly, a lot of the pieces I have currently are not the best set for this, so I'm still trying to, fine tune that a little bit more. So bear with me on that. My build is not fully optimized for this, but the potential of this build here is substantial and very effective for both lower end content, higher end content, and of course end game content as well. So just keep in mind for this is ideally what you want to go for this. For lower end PvE, it's not really much said to be done. Again, Choir 1 and rocking corrective measure is probably your best friends in that specific scenario for fueling up your grenades and getting them back fast as possible. Now again, for DPS, ideally I believe Witherhoard with Heathen Vengeance and that rocket pulse rifle are going to be your best pairings for that. And of course, there might be some other rotations that may come out depending on, the new exotic that comes out from the dungeon or vice versa. There's still some fine tuning of this, but from what I tested right now, currently, this is what I believe to be the best rotation and the best utilization for Nothing Manacles and how I use it for both lower end content and of course, raids and dungeons as well. So all those numbers aside, that's actually going to do it for this video. So appreciate y'all for watching. Hopefully this made a little bit of sense from my testing of numbers here. One last little bit for the armor here. For my build currently, I have 2-piece Bushido and 2-piece Jumper set, which you cannot get anymore. If you do not happen to have those armor set bonuses, ideally you only need 2 of the Feral Pant new armor set from both solo ops and the fire team ops. The other 2-piece can be whatever you have available or whatever you find to be more beneficial to what you have. But ideally 2-piece Feral Pant would probably be the best case to, get a pseudo smoke jumper set so you can give yourself, some damage resistance on top of your build. That's ideally what you want to look for armor set bonuses. But yes, that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully this made a lot of sense here. I definitely have been having a lot of fun with this build and it's pretty strong, but I'm trying not to use it too much because the game will get very boring there. So yeah, again, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Like, comment, subscribe if you did, and I'll catch you in the next one. Don't you ever forget, as always, keep it chill.